Well, welcome everyone. My name's Carmine Di Sibio, and I'm here with Bill McDermott. Hi, Bill. How are you? Love
Hey,
your
Carmine.
background.
How are you,
I,
Carmine?
uh, I've today I tried to dress like a tech guy in black, and I see that you're dressed the same way, Bill. So thanks for that. But we have a little bit of time here to really build to really get to know you a little bit, and also understand ServiceNow and what you're doing. This is a lot harder to do over Zoom and over the technology versus being in person. But hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun as well.
Thank
So Bill, I have to start with talking a little bit about you, about Bill McDermott, and kind of your childhood and how you got started. And I know that I was told that you bought a deli when you were a teenager, which is pretty interesting. As you know, I know you're from Long Island, and I am as well. But two Long Island kids up here talking is pretty impressive. So tell us a little bit about how you got started, how you got into the tech world to start
Well, we came a long way from Long Island, huh, Carmine?
with.
I was a teenage entrepreneur. My first business, I was a teenager. I started a business on Long Island, a delicatessen business. And I guess the first big business lesson was everything has to be focused on the customer. And people talk about it as if it's, universal, but it's very, very internal to understand what that really means. And I got it at a young age because I was competing against Goliaths on either side of me. I had a Finest supermarket and a 7-Eleven. So I had to do what the big ones were either unwilling to do or unable to do. For example, senior citizens around the block, nobody delivered. They didn't want to leave their house. We did. There were the blue collar workers like my dad that would come in on Friday. They would be flush rich, but by Sunday morning, they were dead broke. So we gave them credit. The hard part was the high school kids, though, getting them to walk a block and a half past 7-Eleven. I went down there one day, there's 40 online waiting to get into 7-Eleven, only 4 in the store. I said, why are you all waiting out here? They think we're going to take things. I said, don't worry about that. Come back down to my store with me. And by then I had a video game room and I let them in 40 at a time. They could do whatever they wanted. And you treat people with respect, you get respect back. One of the young people at the end of a long day said to me, Bill, when we want good food, play video games, and have a good time, we come to your store. And when we want to steal stuff, we go to 7-Eleven. So the first lesson was clearly customer centricity. And then I went on to start my career at Xerox in New York City, knocking on cold doors when I was 21.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I got to tell you, Bill, on the customer centricity part, it's so important because you've learned that from your beginning, and I have too. And these days, when you talk to a lot of kids, and I have 4 kids, and I talk to my own kids, and everyone is so geared to doing these internships and so forth, but actually doing what you did, really learning how to deal with customers and being client centric is so important. I couldn't agree with you more. As we go forward. So thank you for that. So let's get into a little bit in terms of what you're doing, but first maybe talk a little bit about technology, what companies are going through in terms of digitization. One of the things at EY that we talk about is, even through the pandemic, we only 25% of clients out there have a digitized supply chain, which means so many more companies have to do more. And I know this is something you're passionate about and you talk about all the time. But tell me a little bit about your view there and what needs to get done.
Well, there are really 3 main secular tailwinds that are going on in the world today that have to be capitalized on. One is digital transformation itself. There is no way forward without digital transformation. Cloud computing is the other. Everything is going to move to the cloud. It has to move to the cloud. It's the only way to continuously innovate and move quickly enough to serve the ever-changing demands of today's customer. And then business model innovation. 25% of the value creation in any company in the next 3 years, 25% will take place in white space, meaning things that you're not currently doing today. And if you don't have the basis of digital transformation, if you're not moving quickly in the cloud, you're not going to be able to capitalize on the white space. One of the examples I really admire is Disney. Disney was in a situation with COVID. There's no cinemas, there's no theme parks, but they bring Disney Plus to market. Now they have nearly 100 million users on Disney Plus. They have an all-time high stock price because they built the digital bridge to the future. So it's all about capitalizing on these three opportunities. Two-thirds of the executives in firms today across the world know that they must do this. I'm surprised it's not 100%, but it's at least two-thirds. So I'd say let's get on with it pretty quickly if you want to win.
No, that's great. That's great. So if we talk about the digitization and then really come into the COVID period, which is what we're in, you all at ServiceNow have done so much during the COVID period to help. I know you worked with the NBA as well. Maybe you ought to describe that to the audience. But what have you been doing during the COVID period to help? I know you have a lot of examples there.
One really important attribute of ServiceNow is a platform company. So executives today want to narrow the list of platforms that they put into their enterprise, because once you put a platform in, you're counting on it to do many, many things for you. What's really unique about ServiceNow is we seamlessly integrate to the 550 biggest systems of record in the world, and also the collaborative tools, whether it's Teams or it's Zoom or any of the others, all fully integrated. So now you can make work better for people. I like to say the world works better with ServiceNow. As it relates to COVID, it was last March. We literally were going into a planning session to blue sky think. And I said, there won't be a blue sky if we don't solve COVID. So we immediately came out with emergency response applications in a week. Then we came out with return to work safely. Are you physically and mentally ready to come back? Is social distancing in place? Do we have PPE inventory management and testing in every office under control? And we rolled this out globally. Now we're in vaccine management. And this is very interesting because you have to distribute the vaccine, administer the vaccine, and then monitor that which you've administered to make sure you have a turnkey 360-degree view of each and every consumer that's getting the vaccine. We've done this in Scotland for 5.5 million citizens. We've done it in states like North Carolina, and we've done it in many businesses around the world, now 100 different entities, and we're working with the federal government as well. So I like to think that the world's biggest challenges are also the world's biggest opportunities. And we as a brand are committed to being in the center of helping this world run a little bit better, a little bit safer, a little bit more sustainable.
That's great. And Bill, as a platform company, I know that, obviously you work with partners. We're one of your partners, and thank you for that. We're doing a lot of great things together. And I know you're working with others as well. But also, what is the strategy in terms of working with other tech firms, smaller tech firms? Do you have acquisitions in mind? What's your whole view of the ecosystem?
Yeah, to be a platform company, the platform has to be adopted, obviously, by the customer. This has to happen in all geographies of the world. It has to happen in 25 distinctly different industries. You have to do everything from pharma to public sector to retail and telco and financial services and every place in between. And you have to be appealing to the personas within an enterprise. So the CEO has to get the benefits that the CIO, CFO, and CHRO also get. So you're thinking broadly. Now, to do that, you have to adopt the ecosystem with open arms. You, Carmine, are one of our truly magnificent global partners, and you do an unbelievable job. I've always admired the attention to detail, the total commitment to customer satisfaction and value creation that you have absolutely role modeled for your entire company, and it shows in the results customers get. So our force multiplier is in fact the ecosystem. And what I've always tried to do with the ecosystem is absolutely be absolute clear and fair about what area we're going into business on. So are we going into a geography? Are we focusing on an industry? This way, all the investments that we make can be harnessed in an exceptional way for the customer. So we're really ready, we're trained, the adoption rates are extremely high, and the customer success and value creation is there. So we are very transparent, We want to build multi-billion-dollar businesses with many partners across the world. Certainly, you're at the top of that list. Now, for the small ones, I'm also extremely excited about small partners because, think about this world. It's a lot of territory to cover. And there's absolute desire on our part to get smaller companies involved in the mix as well. But they have to commit to the training and the certification, because we will not put software on the customer site unless we know it's going to be successful. So the training and the certification is absolutely mandatory.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Bill, in terms of you mentioned the world and geographies, are there particular geographies where you're more focused on today versus a few years ago, or things that are changing? And has COVID impacted that at all?
I think COVID has impacted that, and I'll give you an example. Vaccine management, for example. To see that Scotland was the first mover on adopting it, that wouldn't have been your natural reflex when you say ServiceNow. But we're becoming highly sought after in Europe, Middle East, Africa. So there's a big move there. We are obviously growing exponentially in the Americas and have been, and we're very interested in expanding in Asia Pacific and particularly Japan. Japan is a market right now, when I look at it, very on-premise market, very tied up in the 20th century architecture of system of record, and they really need to get digital transformation, cloud, and model innovation going swiftly. And I think we can be what one analyst told me the other day, the Swiss Army knife of reinventing business in countries like Japan, where it's been not too cloud-centric. And we want to change that. We opened up in South Korea. We're doing extremely well in mature markets like Australia, but there's just so much to do in Asia with the rising middle class, India, and we haven't really gone into China in a big way yet, but it's on the horizon.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on Japan. There's tremendous opportunity there. We've been building our practice and our consulting practice a great deal, even over the last 2 or 3 years in Japan, exactly for the points you mentioned. It is an economy that's going to need this, and it's going to need ServiceNow as well. So that's couldn't agree with you more. So let's change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the topics that are out there that all CEOs talk about today, because I do want to get your view. Number one is on the workplace, and I know I've seen you talk a little bit about this before. What do you envision the workplace to be like going forward? Everyone talks about this hybrid model, and then I'll ask people, well, what does that mean? And no one's figured it out yet, really. And then recently, a few CEOs have said, no, this work from home thing is garbage, or, everyone's going to be back in the office. And then you have the other side of that. So, Bill, what is your view here, just in general, and maybe for ServiceNow?
I think we really have to change people's minds on this idea of where a human body is located. Where a human body is located should be, in many ways, up to the human themselves. Where are they going to be most productive? Where is their creativity and their contribution to the cause going to be absolutely inspired? So what we've tried to do is acknowledge that there's a work from home world, there's a work in the office world, there are attributes of innovation, creative thinking, whiteboarding and planning in a software company and an engineering company, as an example, that definitely happens better when people are personally together in teams, as long as they're socially distanced and safe. And obviously, some jobs you have to go in. If you're manufacturing something, you're probably going to be on a line and you're going to have to be in, or you're caring for patients and so on. So it really is a hybrid world. And I really think this whole panic attack on putting people back in cubicles as if the companies are going to fall apart if we don't do that is ridiculous. Think of it this way, Carmine. The millennial generation will make up 75% of the workforce by 2025. They had no interest in being stuffed in a cubicle before COVID. Now they've had almost a second year of working from home. I actually don't think it'll work very well if a CEO mandates you got to be back in a cubicle, because what'll happen is the talent will decide whether they accept that decision or not. And you could easily turn over very good people. So I think companies that understand giving people a better life, giving them more time, trusting them to be highly productive on their terms, and letting them work the best way possible is going to be the winning formula if you want to attract and retain the very best people in the world. Some companies are going to get that memo, some companies aren't. In the middle of that is who's going to win the talent.
And Bill, from that perspective, what have you done so far at ServiceNow, or what are you going to do in the future in terms of announcing anything, or what's your hybrid model going to look like?
Yeah, we've actually, just yesterday, once again, had a leadership meeting with the whole company on Zoom and stated our policy. So we will be in a hybrid model. We obviously use the Return to Work Safely suite of applications from ServiceNow. There are testing protocols, PPE inventory management, safety distancing in every office around the world. So we've accounted for that. We're bringing people in gradually, safely, and it will happen based upon the readiness of the various geographies around the world to accommodate people safely. But clearly people want that option. They want the option to come in, and we're going to give them the option. My feeling on this is there's going to be many more people that want to come in, and they'll probably want to come in faster than we think. And that's why I think this is one of those procedures that we don't have to overmanage, because I think the human instinct is to want to be with other humans to get things done. And also that collegial feeling that you get when you work in teams. I think the hard part is going to be actually having people come in lower percentages early while we're still fighting COVID than come in too fast. And we kind of laid out a plan for that by geography all over the world. And people seem very happy with our approach.
Yeah, the transition period, I agree with you. The transition period is going to be difficult because even from an EY perspective, what I'm seeing and our clients is that people do want to be with people, no doubt about it.
Right.
And I would have said 3 or 4 months ago, most people just wanted to get back to the office because, let's face it, COVID, the first few months, it was, oh, okay, we're all at home. It's kind of okay. And then people are like, wait a second, I'm missing being with other people. And then, though, I think we went into a phase, and maybe are in a phase of people have gotten used to being at home.
Right.
And I don't want to use the word complacent, but they have been getting used to their new lifestyle. And it's going to take a little bit of a spur to get them back gradually,
Right.
to your point.
Yeah, no
is
question.
what we're seeing as well. But that's more to come there, I'm sure. And it's a topic that goes on all the time. So let me also switch to ESG. This is an area that I know you've all been doing a lot on, and we have as well. And it's something that on all different categories of ESG. If I start with sustainability and climate, it's an area that the U.S. is kind of just waking up now to the issue, in my view. But the U.S. is moving fast. And there's some, big world events that are coming up, including COP26, and there's a lot of focus on this in general. How does this impact ServiceNow and you all, Bill?
I think ESG is going to be the biggest opportunity of the 21st century. I think there's no question that the environment has enormous problems. We all know that. I mean, all you got to do is look at some photographs of the ocean line in Florida or California from 1965 to 2021, and you literally get your soul crushed just looking how bad the situation is. And it's only going to get worse. We spend $236 billion handling a hurricane in the southeast part of the United States. So when people throw around big numbers on what it's going to take to really deal with the environment, the zero carbon footprint, the global cooperation, just keep in mind that we're dumping literally trillions on trying to correct the planet, but we're not actually dealing with some of the systemic root causes on a global basis. So I think it's going to take the political will the business will and the will of all people around the world to come together on this. And I think it's possible. And I certainly think it's necessary. We, as a citizen of all that, need to make sure that our zero carbon footprint commitment is achieved. But also, we want to build software solutions that enable companies to manage the environment, sustainability, and the whole procedure around governing this. You know, you're going to have deals between countries. You're going to have carbon trading and so on. And we'll want to be in the forefront of that. The other thing I would like to mention on, sustainability is really dealing with some of the difficulties of the racial challenges that we've seen in the United States as one example. So what we're doing is, we put together a $100 million fund to drive change. And already we have put 20 million of that 100 million to work. And we're facilitating mortgaging processes and entrepreneurs opening up businesses, particularly in Black communities within the United States. So I think there's many different dimensions of how this whole game plan has to come together for companies to be really good corporate citizens. And I do believe that consumers, whether they're at the consumer level or the enterprise level, will be very focused on who they do business with. And I think the companies that choose to take the lead on ESG, the sustainability of the planet, being fair on a racial level, truly having a diverse, inclusive, and belonging culture, all of this will determine the status of your brand and the interest people have in doing business with your company.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I couldn't have said that better, Bill. I'm in total agreement. One of the things that we've been working on at EY with the other big four is how are companies going to show their commitment and how they're going to demonstrate this via disclosure and the metrics. We've been working on a set of metrics for the World Economic Forum, 21 core metrics that companies would sign up to, and many companies have. And there's other metrics that are out there as well, but it's something that companies are going to have to show how they're doing this. And I do think investors, a couple of years ago, I would say big institutional investors weren't as concerned. Now they are. That's definitely picking up around the world, which is going to be important. And I couldn't agree with you more on equity and racial equity. This is something that we at EY are very focused on as well. And we've been doing a lot of work around this, not only with ourselves, but also with our clients in terms of, you can't just talk about it. You got to show action. And what are you really doing? What are you doing in all your processes, hiring, and so forth around this? And so couldn't agree with you more. One of the areas that I know we're working on together is around neurodiversity. And this is something that, I became familiar with this, I don't know, I guess about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's amazing. I know what ServiceNow or EY is doing in terms of hiring neurodiverse people. And I don't know if you want to comment on that as well.
I think the main thing is, companies that are diverse and that believe in diverse teams substantially outperform companies that don't. And, you're 70% more likely to capture new market share with a diverse team and a true commitment to diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We have a 5-point plan that we have actually published and report out on. And that includes, how do you recruit? How do you promote from within? How do you focus on fair pay? How do you lobby for good? And how, in the end, are you doing with the actual scorecard and the performance of your company? So we believe that diversity is very good for business. And as it relates to neurodiversity, I personally have really been an advocate of autism at work. In fact, I've committed in my prior role, and I'm working on it in my new role, to have 1% of the workforce that would be made up of neurodiverse individuals, because these are individuals that very often are not recruited properly, and they have very unique skills, especially for a software company. And they're very gifted in the realm of software development, analytics, and many other things, mathematics, data science. And that is an untapped wellspring of talent. And I think, our job, as you know, Carmine, is to find those untapped sources for competitive advantage. So again, it's not just that it's the right thing to do, it's extremely good for business.
Couldn't agree with you more, Bill. I have to get back now to Bill McDermott a little bit and ask a few questions about you. And
Sure.
one of the questions I think that a lot of the audience, I'm sure, has is you made it to CEO of a very large global company, SAP. You done terrifically well. And so I, as well as I'm sure most of the audience, were surprised that you would take on another role and build up another company and so forth. So what made you do it? What made you do it?
Well, I started with Xerox as a young fellow, 21 years old, and I worked there 17 years. And it was very hard for me to leave Xerox. I love that company. And, I had an ambition to one day be CEO of that company when I was 21. And I got to the point where after 17 years and, being a corporate officer as a young person and all that, it was great. But I was like, I want to do something different. I wanted to change after 17 years. And with SAP, I was there 17 years too. So I think it's the 17-year itch, Carmine, that kind of comes over me. But I felt that, we took SAP to a sensational global brand. The performance of the company, having performed so well on the revenue, the profit, the market share, truly taking the company to the cloud. I felt that the job was done, and I was at the point where I needed to make a decision. Do I renew for another 5 years, or do I make change? And you only have one life to live. I mean, this is not a dress rehearsal. And when I had an opportunity to go to ServiceNow, I thought my skill set and the uniqueness of this hungry and humble culture and this company with a once-in-a-generation platform and a dream was the perfect remedy, the perfect potion for something that could be a true global sensation. And I thought a lot about it. I researched it very carefully. In fact, I knew ServiceNow very well for a couple of years before I even got into this conversation when John went over to Nike and so forth. And once the opportunity hit me, I said, I believe we can make this the defining enterprise software company of the 21st century. So let's get it done. And I came in here. I'm here a year and a half now. It went really fast. And I'm just thrilled. It's really wonderful. We built a heck of a team. The customer base is incredible. And I stand on the shoulders of giants. Fred Luddy, the founder of the company, is salt of the earth and truly a great innovator. And so much of all the credit belongs to his original invention and his heart for the company and soul for the customer. But we had a great first CEO, Frank Slootman, and an unbelievable follow-on to Frank with John Donahoe, my great friend and super CEO of Nike. So, everybody before me did it really well. And I was brought in to be the guy that scales it to infinity and beyond. And I'm a person that's done that before, so I have a feeling we can do it again.
And the stock price went up just a little bit, but no. So one more question, and that is, this is more of a personal question, but it's something that you and I had a conversation once where you were telling me that you were a basketball coach for a CYO team when you came up to St. Patrick's, which is in my hometown of Glen Cove, and so basketball. So you moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. So who's your team these days? Who do you really root for?
Well, I have to tell you, my friends in San Francisco, and of course, one of our board members is a partial owner of the Golden State Warriors. So I should say the Golden State Warriors, although I like them very much. My sons love the LA Lakers. So out of pure passion for sticking with my sons, I have to lean towards the Lakers. But my grandfather was a pro ball player. And it was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1988 with Wes Unseld. And he played with a guy named George Mikan. And he was Mikan's player coach for the Chicago Gears, which preempted the Chicago Bulls, and they won world titles together. And George Mikan, his claim to fame in the NBA was the Minneapolis Lakers. A lot of people may not realize that the Lakers were in Minneapolis before they were in LA. So for the Mikan era with my grandfather and my two sons, I gotta say the LA Lakers, Carmine.
Oh, and not even close with the New York Knicks or the Brooklyn Nets these days, but you're completely West Coast now, I guess.
Yeah, I am. You know, and it's funny too, because I used to see Dr. J play, as you know, in Comac when he was a young guy with the Virginia Squires when he was 19 years old. And I'll never forget seeing Julius Erving hit the basketball court. I'm like, there's nothing like this man. And all these years later, I end up on the West Coast with the Lakers.
Well, Bill, thank you. Thank you for your time. This has been terrific. It's always great to chat with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Carmine. Always good to be with you, my friend.
Great. Thank you.
See you soon.